All right. Thank you, Legend Makers. Thank you for tuning in to this new Legend Maker series. My name is Alona, and I'm the CEO of FarFromTimid, a social first brand and performance agency that puts brands and creators at the center of culture. I'll also be your guide today on this epic journey for this episode of Legend Makers, the adventures of Analisa Goodin, the CEO of Catch and Release. Analisa, a warm welcome to you. I'm so excited to share your journey with all of us. And how are you? Where are you?
Yes, I'm so excited to be here too. This is such an awesome program that you've started, and I'm just honored to be a part of it. I'm calling in from Berkeley, California. So I'm in the Bay Area, born and raised. Live on the east side of the Bay Area.
Cool. So I'm actually in Israel right now. That's why it's night. It's nighttime here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little disco time for me.
Try and wrap this up quickly so you can get back to the.
No, this is all good. I'm a night owl, so it's good. Before we dive in, I wanted to tell the audience about the inspiration for this series. Legend Makers was inspired by our belief at FarFromTimid that every brand or creator has a legend within, and we exist to awaken it. So during each episode, I interview CXOs, creators at the crossroads of art, tech, brand, and culture. And I do it in this like hero's journey format that reflects our brand methodology. And my hope is that the series will inspire you to ignite your own legend within. So whether you're a CEO or CMO looking for your next innovation, or a creator or entrepreneur that needs a little bit of inspiration, this series will connect you with your purpose. So a couple things before we dive in also. To the legend makers out there listening, make sure you're registered. I get a lot of people listen to, we had another series called Work from Heart, and we get a lot of listeners, but make sure you're registered so we can deliver the best experience for you in the future. And also we're going to do a Q&A at 45 past the hour. So drop any questions in the comments and for Analisa, and we will get to that. And then finally, I'm bribing you guys to stay till the end of the show because we have a giveaway. This is our limited edition snapback legend sword hat. There's only 1,000 sold worldwide, and we only have 400 left. So I'm going to be asking, okay, my hair's messed up now. I'm going to be asking a question at the end of this interview, and the first person to comment with the right answer gets the hat.
Bring it.
So, okay, back to the episode. Analisa, back in 2015, you created a groundbreaking licensing platform for advertisers to browse and license content on the open internet. And to date, your company, Catch and Release, has raised over $26 million. So this Legend Maker journey has 6 parts. So I want to begin with the first and most pivotal part of the hero's journey, which is answering the call for adventure. And the first step to being a legend maker is actually embracing the call and stepping outside of your comfort zone. And it's also the most underestimated part of the journey, because what isn't always understood is that the hero doesn't always want to answer that call first. So, Analisa, what was going on at the time when you thought of this concept for Catch and Release, and what moment did you finally answer the call?
Yeah, it's such a great place to start. And it's always such a treat to look back on those early days, because you kind of realize like, wow, we've really come so far, and you do have to sort of stop and take a beat and reflect on that. Otherwise, you just get caught up in the daily build and grind. So I spent, after graduating from art school and getting a master's degree in art theory, I was a hyper freelancer in a lot of different industries. I worked in like really high quality restaurants, like Michelin star restaurants. I worked in production, helping production teams film. I was a PA. I was going on location and taking directors to the airport and doing all sorts of stuff in that world. But I think that was a period of my life where I just was looking for exposure. So even working in restaurants, it wasn't just a means to an end. It was, I wanted exposure into somebody's creative studio. And if that person happened to be a chef, then okay, fine. I'll just learn what they have to offer and what their vision for their product is. So looking back, I think that was just my, how do I fill the sponge with as much inspiration as possible and exposure to different things as possible before really figuring out what it was that I wanted to do. So in the production world, one of the jobs that I really gravitated to the most was working as an image researcher. So I would get called in by creative teams at advertising agencies or brands, some really well-known agencies. Goodby Silverstein and Partners was a really well-known one in San Francisco at the time, still a customer today. And I helped creative teams there find stuff. Like they would brief me, and they may have been working on a commercial or some sort of project that required imagery. And most often it would go like this. The ECD, or the executive creative director, would come to me and say, we already shot all the footage that we thought we needed, but we're missing like 2 or 3 shots. Can you help us find some pieces to fill in the gaps? And my next question was, well, what are those pieces, and what do they need as an image sort of person, as an artist and as a visual person? I was able to ask good questions around, well, images aren't all the same. So what does it have to feel like? What do you want the consumer to feel when they see it? How does it integrate into the story? What are the technical specifications you need? All of those things. And once I got that from the creative team, I would then just go onto the internet and start searching, because that was really where anybody who didn't really understand the world of sourcing content would go. You go to Google and you start searching. And lo and behold, oh my gosh, it was a treasure trove. There was so much incredible content being posted on platforms like Flickr, and then it was Instagram, and then it was Twitter, and then, eventually places like TikTok. So there was all this like creative potential out there, and I was good at sourcing it. So I would find it and I'd show it to my team, and they'd say, ooh, I love that photo of the father and son on the beach is just like the perfect shot. Mm-hmm. And then a business affairs person or a producer would tap me on the shoulder and say, heard the team loves this shot, client loves it too. How much is it going to cost? And do we have all the model releases necessary? And then they started asking all these questions around licensing that I didn't know in my first couple jobs. I didn't know the answer to that.
Right. You were just trying to find the photo first, and then all of a sudden.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. It was sort of like, this is the right shot. And then it was reverse engineering that into, can I even get the rights to it? And learning that process of obtaining the rights was really nuanced and challenging. I had to reach out to somebody on Flickr in Egypt and just try and connect with them about their amazing photo and get them to agree, get them to feel comfortable first licensing and learning more about who they were. Were they professional? Were they an amateur? How should I explain this opportunity in a way that they feel compelled to respond? I mean, there was hundreds of different pieces to this equation, but I was driven completely by, how do I go back to my creative team and say, like, yes, how can I help them be the hero to their client? Like, yes, you can have it. It's all buttoned up, good to go. And simultaneously, there was an opportunity to make that creator feel really good too. Like, you've just been recognized, you've been compensated, you've understood the process, you have something, and as an end result, you can share with your friends and family. Like, look at this, my photos in the commercial for Adidas or Puma or Google or whatever, right? So anyhow, I was really motivated by these two sides of the equation, one being the creative director working at the advertising agency or the brand, and the other being the unknown human on the other side of an image or video on the internet. And I loved the space between that. And so I just, in the beginning, in the early days, I stitched together a process and a workflow and learned through trial and error how to make that better and better. And then the sort of like really aha moment came from, how are we going to do this at scale? I mean, the internet's not getting any smaller. The iPhone's not getting any less in quality. How is this ultimately going to work in the future? 20 years from now, who's going to make it possible to license the internet? And
right. Like, why isn't anyone doing it?
Yeah. And I think I was sort of like, well, I'm developing this expertise, and I'm also sort of waiting for some of the players at the time to like launch something like it. I was sort of like, well, obvious. This is so obvious. It's so obvious. So someone's obviously going to do it. I'm not I'm not an engineer. So like I was like, smarter people are on this. I'm just going to keep servicing my clients and perfecting this process. And it just never came. And that's when I kind of realized, I was like, oh, I see what's happening here.
I got to do it.
Yeah. And it was kind of a reluctant aha, by the way. I remember pulling my husband aside and being like, ooh, God, like this is going to be such a journey. And like, is this what we're prepared to do? And, you know, it was such a kind of a, gosh, really, is this what I'm going to spend the next 20 years doing? And I just never lost passion for it. Right. But it definitely was a call I had to like accept and respond to.
Yeah. And I love that. You and I had like a pre-interview, and I think that was the most inspiring part of it. I wanted you to make sure that you shared that, because I think people don't really understand that your purpose or your idea that you have or your creativity is something that isn't always something that you want to activate because you know the effort and time it's going to take. But answering the call to adventure is really the biggest and most pivotal step in the Legend Maker journey.
Yeah. And there's a lot of risk also, right? I mean, there was a lot I knew a lot, but there was so much I didn't know. I didn't know how to start a company. I didn't know. I'd hired some freelancers to help me do some of the tasks around the curation, which is what we call searching. When we get a brief and we start finding content, we call that curation. So I hired curators and taught them how to do what I did. And I hired licensing people who knew way more than I did about licensing, who'd been doing that their entire career. But, you know, certain things like raising money and being a CEO and, you know, there was a lot I didn't know what I didn't know. And so answering that call was also saying, hey, even though
I ready for all of this,
I'll just have to figure it out and accept the risk that I don't know everything.
So that's great. You just segued into the second part of the Legend Maker's journey, which is crossing the threshold, right? Once you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. And this was the same thing for FarFromTimid when I was launching FarFromTimid, because we have a whole new concept of marrying brand and performance marketing. And I knew there was a big road ahead and how to explain it and the graphics and the methodology. But once you accept the call and embrace the adventure, you have to cross into uncharted territory. And you know that you're transcending mediocrity, right? You know that you're doing something that nobody else is, and you're venturing into this unknown. So how did you go from, you know, okay, I'll embrace this adventure to okay, I'm going to actually go and do this? And what happened after you said, okay, I'm going to do this? I know you said you called your husband and blah, 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 but like, you know, this is.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, because I think it's also good advice, I think, for anyone else out there looking to venture into something new that they've never done before. I really started it as a sort of following a trail of breadcrumbs and talking to whoever would listen to me about the vision that I had. So it was kind of first being able to articulate, what is this adventure, right? What is the destination, right? I'm going to go on this adventure, but what's the ultimate destination? Why am I doing this? What am I aiming to build or see exist in the world? And that's actually more the way I saw it. It was more like, what does the world look like after I've pursued this thing? Well, it looks like a licensable internet that creates an entire new economy for creators and brands, and honors and recognizes everyday people for the stuff that they're producing. It's really kind of answering the call to a moment of democratization in the content space that I saw. So I was really fixated on the end, what does the world look like after I've succeeded at building this product? And then you reverse engineer from that. What does the road to building that product then need to look like? And I was at the very beginning of this road I've never been down. I had never been down before. I'd never built a product before. So I started by just talking to anybody who would listen to me, anyone who was smart. I was lucky to be based in the Bay Area at the time, because it gave me exposure to building a network fairly quickly of CEOs and venture capitalists and people who spend time operating in the startup space. So I was able to meet for coffee with somebody, and at the end of that coffee, I'd say, "Is there anyone else I should be talking to?" And then they would introduce me to someone. So as I was still servicing my clients and still, managing the curators and licensing people that I had on staff as freelancers, but I was moonlighting as this kind of almost investigative journalist, going and meeting with as many different people as possible to share and articulate my vision, and then just get their feedback and say, what should I do next? Like, what's
and
the
people open and
so open, so open. And I really see this as a pay it forward moment. I think actually the way you and I first met was I had posted some tips and tricks on fundraising for other founders that might be in the space during this kind of economy. And I see that as a pay forward. It's part of my DNA as a founder, because I benefited so much from it when I was getting started and had no idea what I was doing. So people were very willing to spend half an hour, and I buy them coffee or buy them lunch, and genuinely wanted to help. And those connections led me to enriching my network, but also got me better at pitching what it was I was trying to do. And then the help people would offer turned into, there's someone who's looking for a role as a finance person at a startup. I want to introduce you to him. He might be interested in helping out as an advisor. Or I know an engineer that is just leaving a position and might be interested in coming in, and helping you build the first version of this. So it became more targeted as the conversations went on, but it started with, how do I just get some exposure to this idea in general, and then figure out how to patch the holes as I go.
I don't know if you'll remember, but like, how many conversations do you think that you had?
Oh gosh. It was sort of like every week I would probably have like 3 or 4 a week. And that went on for probably a year. I met a lot of people. I met a lot of people.
No, I think it's important because, when I remember I read Shoe Dog a long time ago, Phil Knight's book. And he goes through so much like mud, and he doesn't give up. He just keeps going and going and going. So even in my own journey, sometimes we hit rough spots, and I'm just like, okay, Phil Knight, Shoe Dog, just keep going, keep going.
Such a good book. I love his advice. That's like, you're not expected to know all the answers. You're not expected to always succeed. Really, the only true failure comes when you stop. And I just anybody can keep going. We can always, that's like, if we can hold ourselves to that standard of, it's not about success and failure, because failure is inevitable. You have to fail in order to get to success. So if the real measure is just keep going, and like, sign me up. I'm like, right. I'm ready. I'll just keep going.
So one of the things that we do in our methodology is we work with brands, and early on in the process, if we're doing, whether it's a campaign or a brand initiative, we ask them we kind of assign archetypes, a brand archetype. And this is we didn't not invent this, but in a world of performance marketing, brand archetypes don't really exist. Like, no one's really assigning brand archetypes for performance marketing, because it's like, just buy me, buy me, buy me. But we marry brand and performance marketing. And so it's really helpful, I think, for creators or brands to identify with some kind of North Star of an archetype, and it keeps the inspiration alive. So I'm just curious. I'm just going to throw out a couple of archetypes. I want to know which one maybe you unknowingly identified with it, and that kind of helped kept you going. But so a creator archetype is inspires, the magician transform, the visionary sees beyond the ordinary, the outlaw challenges the rules, and the muse gives birth to masterpieces. Of any of those, do any of those resonate?
Every single one of them resonates. I kind of, not to sort of like give you a cop-out answer, but I sort of feel like each of those are pieces that make up a whole in an entrepreneur that's aimed at creating a category and changing the status quo. Because we definitely are creating a category and changing the status quo. So you need magician for that. You need outlaw. Was it outlaw?
Outlaw.
Yeah, you need outlaw for that. But you also can't like shout at people to do that. You sort of have to inspire them. You have to paint a picture of what the world looks like as a result of them changing their behavior. And I think you have to be a muse as well. So I really think actually all of those are critical ingredients to being an entrepreneur that's aiming to do something really big and bold.
Great. Yeah, I was thinking like muse visionary, that kind of combination for catch and release.
It's also interesting. I think also in the sort of journey of building something for the founder, you have to be ready to like lean into certain things more than others at any given time, depending on what's happening in the market or what's happening in your company, right? You have to sort of dip into different parts of yourself. Sometimes the company requires you to lead with a stronger voice. Sometimes you need to sit back and let others take a stronger stand. It's like there's a push and pull there that I think is super interesting too, that all of these are ingredients that you need to maybe utilize in different capacity, in different
I love that. Like to calibrate. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's not a static, you're not a static leader, and your company is not a static thing, and the market is not nothing is static. Everything is in motion constantly. So you're constantly having to meet the moment. Every time every single day, it feels like I have to wake up and meet the moment. What's the moment going to be today? Yeah.
Right. And that's being present, right? I mean, that's a state, and that's also from a leadership perspective, you have to be in that state of mind of being open, of being present, of always saying, okay, I'm ready, I'm here, right?
Yeah.
That's really important. Really quickly, for those legend makers that joined, we have a Q&A. So if you have any questions, just put them in the comments section and we'll get to it. It's looking like probably around 11:50 or 2:50, 11:50 Pacific time and 2:50 Eastern Standard Time. So the next part of the journey is slaying dragons, right? So you have to identify and slay dragons that are hindering your process, hindering your progress. So, I mean, you're trying to transform the landscape of culture and reshaping your industry. And at the same time, I'm sure you came across some challenges. So what are the biggest dragons that you had to slay, and what were the contextual forces around you that helped to clarify what you needed to do?
Yeah. What's an interesting, and the interesting answer I have for you at the beginning is, again, it's like when you say like face the moment every day, the dragons are always there, right? It just depends on what they are in a given moment. The first one was really myself, if I'm being honest. Like I was the first dragon I had to slay, where I really had to rise up as a leader and say, whoa, we're going to do something really big and bold. And that means I have to make big and bold decisions, which means I have to lead these people. Because at the time, before we raised money, we had bootstrapped the company to about maybe 15 people, including a small handful of engineers. So I had people who were here, and it was incumbent on me now to paint that picture for them as to where we were going, what kind of risks we were going to take to get there. So I would say myself and my own leadership style was the first dragon. Was how do I get this whole company and all of these people on board behind me to push this thing forward? The second dragon was probably fundraising, because as a startup founder, especially building tech, you are always going to need to front load your costs before you've reaped the benefits of what you've built. So we had the benefit of having customers in the early days. Before we even had a product, we had customers. But we needed to invest in building the product, hiring more people on the team, and launching software. So that required raising some outside money. And that was probably the second big dragon to slay. In many ways, because I'd never done it. I'd never raised money before. So there was a huge learning curve there. And in the second way, because investors often, especially sort of Silicon Valley investors, do a lot of really big bet investing. The the profile of an investor usually actually is to pattern match or to look for sort of likes. And there were no lookalikes, right? In our case, I couldn't point to another software company and say, it's like that but for this.
Right.
And so I had to help in the investor community understand and meet them where they were, speak their language. You know, my first pitch deck ever was like so beautiful. I think I hand drew on the slides because I'm a creative company. I'm an artist. This is my moment to show them who I am. And they were like, what is this? Give me the money.
That's awesome.
I was doing my authentic self, but it wasn't quite what the audience wanted to see. So I needed to understand the brand archetypes of my audience, right? And meet them where they were. And that was like, okay, well, how do I don't need to change my vision or my passion around this or my expertise, but I do need to change the language so that this audience can actually understand what I'm trying to say. So I would say that was the next biggest dragon. And then there have been thousands since then, but I would say the big unlocks in the beginning were, how do I show up to lead a team of people through this? And can I get investor confidence and investors to come on board to be on this journey too?
Maybe I don't know, maybe offline in the next couple of days, I want to see that picture that you drew, and I want to post it with the post interview.
Okay, I'll see if I can dig it up. Yeah.
So the next part of the journey is getting yours, okay? Right? To become a legend, you got to claim your rightful place in the market and say, I'm here, I'm ready. A lot of confidence, right? This is the moment where you figured out what you're selling and how to communicate that to your investors. And it's not so much entitlement, right? I'm not saying that at this stage it's like claim your rightful place, meaning you're entitled, but it's just there's a knowing about this part of the journey that this is your time and you're freeing yourself from the chains of conformity. You just like totally let go of whatever you had in mind for your career or your future, and you just let go. So how did you succeed in defining the category, and at what point did you begin to gain traction and the attention of investors? I know we talked a little bit about this in just a few minutes ago, but just digging a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, as you were kind of just describing this phase, what was going through my head was like really kind of at what point was I staying as true as possible to the core of our business promise? And the promise that we were making in the beginning was like, license what you love. If you see something on the internet that is just calls to you and speaks to you, and that you think is a great addition to a story that you're telling and that you really believe in, you can feel it, right? Like in the beginning, before the iPhone came out, there was, super high production cameras, like the Red camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
That production teams would go out and rent, or if they were lucky enough to own it, they could go out and shoot like massively beautiful films and commercials with very expensive equipment. And then there was like disposable cameras and eventually the GoPro and maybe a little bit of prosumer stuff, like the early versions of the early Canons, like the 5D Mark II was one of the first prosumer. It was a $3,000 camera, but it was like really shoot. I think they shot a whole episode of House on the 3D Mark II, which was like a big deal at the time. That
wasn't some like scary movie, some horror film that was shot? I forgot. Anyway.
Well, yeah, actually, the Blair Witch Project, which came out.
Oh, right.
I was working as a restocker at J.Crew at the time. One of my little kind of getting exposure to lots of different things. Learned I didn't like that at all. The Blair Witch Project came out, and I was like, oh, that's like that. Retrospectively, I'm like, that was the first UGC film. It was handheld. It was like, it absolutely deprioritized resolution and prioritized intensity and authenticity and like
storytelling,
really, like being in there with the cast, right? And that I think that's what I saw my clients doing, as when they really were like falling in love with things that they were finding on the internet. It wasn't because they were shot better. It was because they felt connected to the content. And it didn't mean the content had to be always like poorly lit and handheld and shaky and like not great composition. It really could be just as the cameras got better, as the iPhone launched and the 4 turned into the 5, turned into the 6, etc. And then the Shot on iPhone campaign came out, where everybody could see on billboards the quality of this camera. It became obvious to me that creatives could have the best of both worlds. They could fall in love with this stuff, they could use it, it could look amazing, and it could connect with consumers better. And if we could empower a whole creative economy behind that by recognizing creators who own this content and send them through a process that they trust and feel safe participating in and are compensated for. Our purpose as a company is to connect, protect, and celebrate the world's creators and storytellers. And each of those words, connect, protect, and celebrate, are so critical to the feeling we want our customers and creators to have as a result of doing something on Catch and Release's product. So I think that the moment where I felt like I can claim this is when I felt like the reason for even doing this at all, the values that I like had around this content, the things I wanted our customers and our creators to achieve and feel. Once I saw that starting to be replicable, and that was a reason customers were coming back to buy more from us, I was like, okay, this is our slice. Like this is us. It's like our DNA. And looking around, was still looking around to see like who else is gonna build the thing. And I saw people starting to poke at it, but they didn't have the values. They didn't have the creative values that I had. They weren't the same, and they had their own values, and that's totally fine. But that's when I think started to realize, like, I'm being rewarded for staying really true to the core of what we set out to do. And that's very ownable, because it's us, it's me.
The customer. I mean, you were in it. You were at the agency. You were talking to the finance people. You were talking to the creative team. You were talking to exactly what the needs were for the agency and for the brand. And I think that's really important. And I do remember there was a point, like right before you started Catch and Release, where I said to myself as a creative director, I'm like, I'm not using stock photography anymore. Like, and I think a lot of creatives did that. I think at some point everyone wanted that authentic feel to represent the brand. They didn't want it to feel corporate anymore. And I think that's really important. I wish I knew about you guys in 2015.
That's what everyone said, by the way. That's when I knew I had a business, because I went up and down after leaving Goodby Silverstein and Partners, I started freelancing. And I went like up and down Market Street. I printed business cards at Kinko's on Embarcadero. And I went up and down Market Street to every agency and production company I could find, knocking on the door saying, hi, I'm Analisa, and I provide this really specific service, which is finding and licensing content from anywhere on the internet. And the number of people who said, oh my God, I wish I had known about you 2 months ago. Oh my God, I wish and I was like, okay, there's a there. I just need to talk to enough people that there's something coming down the pike in like a few weeks, inevitably. So that's always a great thing to hear.
So once you answer the call, you ventured into the unknown, you slayed dragons, there's no turning back. You've obviously changed the industry, and you changed your character in some ways to rise to the occasion. The next step in this Legendmaker journey is mastering this new normal, right? You launched, how do you keep innovating, and how do you not give up, right? I mean, you already went into the unknown. Where is the there, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that comes down to focusing on what the world looks like, as a result of our success. What does the world look like? And the world doesn't look like that yet. So we still have to keep building.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there's so much that we want to do to further impact the creator and the creative, the creative director and the story, who we call the storyteller, and the creator on the internet. Like, there's so many ways to continue bridging that gap. When we first started, it was really a matter of us just taking in the things our customers were finding or that we were finding for them and manually figuring out how to license them and keeping all that data on a spreadsheet. But that's not scalable. So then it became, how do we build a software product that can at least house that activity, even if some of the licensing and communications between the two parties has to be manual, at least the platform can give the customer status updates and the creator status updates. Then it became, how do we automate some of these tasks? Because there's hundreds of tasks in the process of licensing. It's the who shot the photo or video, who appears in the photo or video. Are any of those people minors? Because then you need a parent to release them. Or is there any other special IP like logos or a building or anything else that needs to be flagged? So it's it gets very complex very quickly. So then it became a matter of like, how do we automate some of those tasks, right? So then we're getting kind of closer to the vision of licensing the internet. Then it became, well, how do we empower creators who have licensed through us and have trusted us to manage this process for them? Would they like to do it again? And then we launched our creator community earlier this year, where creators can come in and connect their social accounts to catch and release so that we can continue to connect, protect, and celebrate their work in the context of the projects that our customers are working on. And we work with customers, Google and Meta and State Farm and Apple and Disney and all amazing brands, like the world's best brands. And so they have expectations for the world's best content and the world's best. I love actually this intersection of brand and performance marketing, because I think both, you can't do anything without both of those things. Right. Usually we don't talk that much about the intersection. It's usually sort of this divide of somebody focusing on this and somebody else focusing on that. So I love that connection. But our customers have that expectation. It has to be reflective of their brand. The content they put out in the world has to be reflective of their brand. It has to perform. And so we launched our creator community that allows creators to opt into becoming discovered. Then we just launched, in fact, TechCrunch just covered this today in a press release around our product, but we just launched an AI-driven search engine that sits on top of our creator community. So that and it's geared and built for the storyteller search process, which is very different from the normal way of searching, right? You're not looking always for just a boy on a bike. You're looking for something that feels nostalgic, or you're looking for hope.
Prompting is a whole, it's really interesting because when I started using Midjourney, I mean, there was some really, and Midjourney, we're not really using it for our clients necessarily sometimes, but because AI has not been worked out legally with all these, we kind of use it just for inspiration. But it's really intense. There are some real ninja prompters, and I'm like, wow, I would have never thought how to prompt like that. So I think on your platform, I think being an excellent prompter is really important, right?
And making sure that the imagery and video that's responding to the prompt is tagged in the right way so that the right things come up. I mean, so we're kind of taking steps toward the world as we see it, as it should exist, right? The world should exist in this way that I imagine, which is that the internet is this incredible creative supply chain that has we'll use some investor language, has no liquidity. You can't go to Instagram and just buy something right there. You'd have to DM the person. You've got to then get the rights. You've got to figure out the pricing. You've got to do the pay. Like, that is a huge lift. And the person might just say no because they're like, I don't really want to license my stuff. How do you know? There's so many ways. There's so many points of failure in that process. So we're bringing predictability to all of that and discoverability to all of that. So it's I'm on this journey to see that end state. I want to see the world the way I see it today. And
I love that you're rewarded
of innovation.
No, and I love that creators are being rewarded in that way. It is the creator economy, and I think that's another reason to love catch and release. So
it's actually bigger than the creator. Like, the creator economy to me has been such a huge advancement here, because it is acknowledging the everyday creator and saying, like, you should be treated like a professional, even if you didn't go to film school and even if you didn't, pursue a career. in this field. So I love that as a step. But what ultimately we end up licensing content sometimes from people who don't even identify as creators at all. And one of the first responses we sometimes get is like, who, me? Like, no, you can't possibly have the right person. I just have an iPhone and this is just like my family and we're living on a farm. Like, you can't possibly want my stuff. And I'm like, no. Connect, protect, and celebrate. That's the celebrate is like, no. You have been recognized by Nike as having something of value and you need to be recognized for that. So it's actually even bigger than the creator economy. It's like people who don't even identify as being part of that economy can participate now.
I love that. I love that. So the last step in this journey is returning victorious, right? So you mastered this new normal. You're in this new place. You're constantly innovating right now with your platform, with your creator community, with your predictability models. A legendary brand like Catch and Release and a legendary creator or builder like you, Analisa, leaves a trail of inspiration in your wake. Okay. I mean, I'm totally inspired by our conversation. So, how can your journey light the way for others? And what do you think was your most profound personal change that helped you reach these new heights?
I love the image of that, of lighting the way for others. I was on a podcast with Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, and I was with a couple of other founders, and we got to ask him questions. And my question of his was, as a founder storyteller, where like one of your biggest assets as a founder is to tell a really compelling story about where you're headed and where you're going. How do you scale? Like, how do you scale? Because ultimately, like, I can't be in every single conversation. So his response was, you have to allow other people, you have to light the torch for others. So your customers can be torch bearers for you. Your employees can be torch bearers for you. How do you create as many torch bearers as possible? That's how you light the way to your future. So I love this image of my responsibility being lighting the way, the path to the future, which right now otherwise would be completely dark because it's still an adventure. It's still an path. But simultaneously, what am I leaving behind me for other people to then follow, or to at least have some light on their own journey? I think that's a really cool image. I think it's certainly paying it forward around learnings in the founder journey. So showing up to things like this, where I get the opportunity to just talk and be candid about the strengths and weaknesses, the challenges and opportunities, the things I didn't know, the risks I took, not knowing anything about fundraising or being a CEO, all of those things I think are so important to just be open about, because there's inevitably other founders and entrepreneurs out there who are probably wondering, but I've never done this before. Am I going to totally screw this up? Am I going to fail? Should I take the leap or not? So I definitely think there's a lot of value in just sharing. And then I think also I'm a huge fan of modeling. So I think as a leader, especially as the CEO, we have to model the behavior we want others that we expect others to do. So vulnerability is a huge value for me. I'm very open about when I do or don't know the answer to something. I'm not somebody who shows up and sort of is expected to have other people think I know all the answers. Like I definitely work through things with my team. I give credit to other people. I try to create a safe environment for people to want to take risk with me, which I think means opening up and sharing the goods and the bads. So I think that's part of lighting the way.
No, I definitely feel like your character, you're very accessible, right? I mean, I'm sure you get very focused at times, but I do feel, I've only known you for a couple of weeks, but I definitely feel like if I had anything to say to you or it would just be so easy to talk to you. And I think leadership in that way, I think I grew up in the corporate world where it wasn't like that, where it was too hierarchical. And so I'm trying to do that in my company as well, which is really, I want to be a different kind of leader. I want to create my own model for leadership,
Yeah.
and I think that's what you're doing as well.
I think there's something else to that, which is, as a leader, letting others light the way for you is also super important. So I do try to be I think I am really accessible, but as you say, there are moments where maybe I let my nervousness about the future get in the way, or, I question, are we on the right path? Are we doing the right things? And I have team members that have come forward and said, hey, I want to give you some feedback. I think that this could be handled differently. Or have you ever thought about maybe handling this thing this way? Or have you thought about talking to this person about that thing? I really wouldn't be here without that kind of feedback from people. So those are moments where I'm like, someone else is saying, hey, can I shine a light on something for you? I see this a little differently than you do. Have you considered maybe going left instead of right here? I think definitely letting that happen can be huge, because it does two things. One is it creates an environment where everybody's really together on the journey. And two, it reminds the person in charge, in this case, you or me, that it's not our sole burden. We're not the
Right.
only hired people to help us do this. And we have to let them help us do this. That's a big part of it.
Yes, I hear you. I think sometimes you get wrapped up in the day to day, you get wrapped up in the future. It's hard sometimes to breathe. I've been trying to do meditation every day when I can, really committing to those kinds of because I actually have a lot of energy. So sometimes I really need to just like chill out. And so that's been really, really helpful. I just checked the comments. We've got a lot of attendees, but there are no questions right now. So that means that, but I'm going to ask the question in case anyone wants this hat. So the question is, what were the names of the two women that developed the concept of brand archetypes? That's the question. The first to comment gets this limited edition legend hat. And Analisa, I just want to let you know how inspired our conversation was. I'm inspired, and I hope everybody out there listening is inspired. I'm gonna send out the playback, and hopefully I'll try to snag that piece of artwork from your first pitch. But you've been really an inspiration, and I'll also share the details of like where the creator community is and how to access catch and release. And I just want to thank you so much for your time, and to all of you out there who are listening to the show. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope you like this format. Let me know, give me any feedback about this Legend Maker format as well. So anything else? Any last words, Analisa?
No, this was such it was a wonderful 45 minutes to spend together. And I so appreciate you reaching out and inviting me on. And I love the purpose of this. I love the name. Far From Timid is so awesome. And I think this is great work. So I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Analisa. Have an amazing day and rest of week. And
Thank you.
I hope you'll join us again soon.
Thanks, Alona, for sure.
Bye.